Hey everybody, I am on the line on Zoom right now with Effy. He just had his big gay brunch event, and usually we go into these sort of calls promoting the event that is upcoming, but I wanted to switch it up because I feel like in this case it's maybe more important to, talk about the follow through and the reception. So Effy, how are you doing today?
I'm really fired up today, and you can see I look ridiculous. I did not shower yesterday. I laid in bed all day. I got back Monday and I did my stream Monday night on Twitch. Look at how bad my spray tan looks. This is hilarious. Um, I did my stream on Twitch on Monday, and then I basically collapsed for 24 hours and was just done. So I've been getting back into things. I'm really fired up today because somebody was talking about me and Marco's stunts match from Saturday, which was so goofy. But the event overall was incredible. And we
Yeah,
just got to make a donation to the Indiana Youth Group, which helps LGBTQ youth. My background came
there we go.
back. And that was really important to me, too, to be able to give back to Indianapolis and kind of show them that we appreciate them letting us go crazy in their space for a little while.
So, I mean, when I first think about it, like rural Indiana, like I've never really been there, but like the Midwest, like it seems very maybe not receptive to these sort of events. And they ended up giving a proclamation to GCW
They did.
for
So
Indie Weekend. So
they came in that morning of my show, and I talked with Mr. Bizarro, who is from Indianapolis, and he was like, I have one of the county councilors here, and they want to present GCW with a proclamation declaring this independent wrestling weekend. And I was like, good, we're opening the show with the proclamation. So we had Councilwoman Ali Brown out there, who's the first openly queer elected county council person in Indiana state history, gave the proclamation to GCW. We got to open the gay brunch with that, and it was like, for as outlaw as we are most of the time, it was kind of nice to have the government step in and be like, y'all are doing something cool for the people here, especially in a hard time. And so, Brett was even surprised. Brett was like, did you know she was coming? I was like, no, I didn't know, but I knew that the world needed to see that we are actually doing something good.
yeah, and as you mentioned, the donation too. So I mean, besides those 2 points and the event, like individually and collectively, pun sort of intended, it's getting good reviews. So, you know, do you feel like your personal goals were met for the event itself? Do you feel like maybe it's step one of a bigger idea?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. It's step one of a bigger idea. And I kind of joked to someone, I was like, look, there's a lot of hype going into this show, but where this show is really going to shine is afterwards when people can see that you guys can really wrestle and that there are really LGBTQ performers out there and that we are real life professional wrestlers who can do everything that everyone else do. And now to kind of see, like, I've already had people DMing me who are on the show who are like, I just got booked for this promotion or I just got booked for this promotion. And so, like, the longer form effect was like, let's stop having these segmented worlds of here's the gay wrestling, here's the straight wrestling. Let's mix everybody. And even speaking to my guys in SGC, having Mance and Justice and Manders out there, AJ Gray slept in. I don't hold it against him. So I threw Levi Everett out with him too. And they were like, we didn't know these guys were that tough. We didn't know these people were that incredible. And it's the magic that, like, you don't know your opponents are good until you're there with them. And I got to combine those opponents. I just hope over the next few months we still see that growth and we still see these people popping up everywhere and kind of showing who they really are. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say even if people don't know your work, the event poster sells you alone. Like it's purple, it's loud, it says what it is, but you did have quite a bit of the interesting lineup. I mean, you had, like you mentioned, some of the guys you're familiar with, like Mance, yourself, um, Matthew Justice, and then you have like, I mean, I'm from Philadelphia, so I know Chikara a little bit, but like Still Life with Apricots and Pears is like, I think that's just so unique.
It
And
is, and they've been so wonderful too because I had three Chikara kids ride in, and it was Still Life with Apricots and Pears, and they are non-binary and they are a work of art. I had Molly McCoy come in, who is also non-binary. They are a hockey player in the ring, and they used a hockey stick against Perot. And then I also brought in Joshua Wavera from Chikara, the former Joshua Wells. They are also non-binary, and to get to put them not in just like here's a little thing, but to have a big moment with Pero for Molly McCoy, to have a big moment in an 8-man tag for Joshua Waver, to have a big moment for Apricots and Pears getting to have an actual full singles match with Dark Sheet from the West Coast, a trans competitor who runs all of Hood Slam. It's like I get to do these moments with people who are my friends, but also people who I believe in as competitors, that once they get the shine in the spotlight, they take it to the fullest, and they don't just take a little bit and go, okay, well, that was good. They're sort of showing the whole world this whole new thing and not being held back by the Chikara system anymore. I joked one time, I was talking to a lot of Chikara kids at a freelance show, and I was giving them all this advice, social media advice, how to run stuff, how to do stuff. And they said, well, should we pay you for this? I said, well, you can pay me the same thing Mike Chikara pays you. And they just walked away. Mike Quackenbush, not Mike Chikara. I can't call him Mike Chikara. I don't care. That dude called me one time, and he was just talking. He goes, hello, it's Mike. And I go, you really fucking talk like that, don't you? But it's good to see them put that behind them and say, hey, just because someone we were involved with is not a good person, we are still good wrestlers. We are still good entertainers, and we are not just Chikara wrestlers. Post this, a lot of changes have been made. We've seen a very good professional wrestler come out. We've seen Boomer Hatfield do more stuff. We've seen Matt Mikowski take a huge role in more of the MMA. We saw him at Bloodsport. I want the world to know that these Chikara kids know what they're doing. I call them kids. They're my age. But these Chikara trainees know what they're doing. They know how to wrestle. Let's get them out of this bubble. Let's get them into the real world, and let's show the world that, like, keeping them in this little tiny closed Chikara space was so silly for so long.
Yeah, and I think even on maybe a larger scale, like, you think there've been gay wrestlers on TV before, and it's been really limited to, okay, well, they're gay, and then they don't really, not that they should do anything with them because of that, but it's like they never really did anything in WWE with Darren Young besides, like, okay, he's our first openly gay wrestler.
Well, it's like when somebody's diving off the diving board for the second time. And the first time they got on the diving board, they said, we're going to do a triple Lindy and we're going to flip. And they just bang their head on the back of the diving board and they fall in the water. And now 10 years later, they're given a chance to dive in again. When WWE had help from real LGBTQ groups, they threw it down the drain. They had an opportunity to do a big storyline with Billy and Chuck. They're two heterosexual guys. I get it. It's only going to go so far. But when you just throw everything down the drain and kick it away, and they saw the bad press they got, that was them hitting their head on the diving board. And so now they're given an opportunity of another gay wrestler, and they go, we're just not going to get even on the board again. We're just going to go to the stairs and get in the pool, because when given the chance to really shine with their gay talent or gay storylines or things that had to do with homosexuality, they blew it so hard that they're scared to do anything again. So you have someone like Darren Young come out and they go, well, he may be gay, but Darren Young is straight, just because they're so scared of pissing people off again that they won't take the chance. And instead of calling someone in who could help them and walk them through it and help them have these storylines the same way they should be doing with people of color, the same way they should be doing with women, the same way they should be doing with any sexual minority, bring someone in who knows what you're talking about, and you can do it properly. But they don't even want to touch it anymore because they got burned so bad by the stove that they don't want to burn their hand again. And it's sad. It's sad to see that, because you look at AEW taking a chance and saying, look, Sonny Kiss is an openly gay person, is a feminine gay man or gay person, however they want to identify. They've kind of told me they don't care. And we are putting them in a position against Cody Rhodes, in a tag team with Joey Janela, against these great competitors. Look at the differences of that. Hey, we're going to take a chance. And yeah, we're going to get a little catch and a little feedback, but we're going to make our women's champion a trans woman. We're going to make our top stars these gay people, versus, well, we might get burnt again. And so they just don't do anything.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I look at it more situational instead of, company compared to company, and people are going to do that anyways. But I do feel like maybe WWE is dipping their toe in now, where, there was this quote from, I think, Stephanie McMahon about philanthropy is the success or whatever that overblown.
Philanthropy is the future of marketing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have that, and then you have how AEW is handling it. But outside of those two situations, do you feel like, there's something that really is going to help get to that next step? Does it have to take a gay or lesbian, or does it take them transcending wrestling where it's more about, the person as an entertainer? Like,
In a sense, yes. I have a very strange belief system in this, and it's that I believe we used to use these companies to give us the clout. WWE superstar so and so, AEW superstar so and so, even before AEW, but they haven't gotten past the mentality of it yet. And now the companies need us for the clout. The fans are familiar with these independent stars before they go in. They're familiar with their work for the most part. There's a lot of WWE and AEW people who they're seeing them for the first time, but a majority of the people watching these shows have kind of seen these people before and kind of seen these things coming in and have access to the internet. Where I'm seeing with that is, let's take the company completely out of the equation. I talked with Dirty Ron McDonald, and he runs shows in San Diego, and he said, the moment I started becoming successful at running shows is when I stopped catering to wrestling fans and I started catering to people who want to spend $20 and have a good time. He said, I figured out the wrestling fans are going to come. And when you see these cards, like let's take Sunday, for example. Chris Masters and Carlito were supposed to face Danhausen and Effy. It's a money match. It's a big deal. What's going to happen? They deal with whoever they deal with. Their manager pulls them off. They don't have the match. It is what it is. Were there any more or less people there because of Chris Masters and Carlito and their WWE status 12 years ago? Maybe. But I don't think it was that much of a difference. And they got a surprise with something else as well. They got a different thing. Wrestling fans are going to come and see wrestling. If you have Chris Masters there and you want to spend an extra $1,000 or whatever it is, cool. Wrestling fans are then going to go, and we got to see Chris Masters. But it doesn't stop them from buying the ticket in the first place. My goal now is to flip the live event format completely and say, look, I think if we say there's going to be wrestling, we'll get wrestling fans. We can tell them a few wrestlers. But if we can tell people that they can just come yell at something for 3 hours and drink some beer and have fun, and the show's right there and it's not on a screen and you don't have to look at your phone, that to me is the new sell. It's less, how do we get as big as the companies, and more, how do we take what we know as wrestlers and forget all the companies and get people involved in a way that they haven't been before. We're not trying to lead people to cable television viewership. It's not going to happen. Cable television will be gone in 3 years completely. We'll still have Hulu, Netflix, all that stuff, but we're not going to have cable subscriptions. Now we have to flip the script and say, look, in COVID, we can get the streams online. When this COVID kind of ends, how do we get people back to seeing us versus going to a movie, versus sitting on their couch, versus doing this? If we can get people who are not going to watch WWE, AEW on cable to come physically to wrestling shows, we can start that shift, because those companies will follow where the people are paying attention. All those companies have people on full salary who are supposed to watch indie shows and see what's going on. And if they can see that we don't need them anymore, they're going to start making the shifts to be more like us because we have success where we're at.
That mentality sounds sort of how every time I talk to somebody about Lucha Vavoom, it's not even a wrestling event. It's downtown LA. It's theatrical. It's punk rock. It's like all these different things, and I never get the same answer. And I think that's a good outlook to have moving forward, especially like with COVID. Like, how are you going to hook the people where it's an event? It's not just wrestling fans. So you're going to get you're going to get your personal fans, you're going to get the wrestling fans, but then how do we get the people to come with them that enjoy it? And I think we're starting to see that with stuff right now.
I've also noticed in the past year, not to like, this sounds so egotistical, people talk less shit about me now because what they've seen is my brand of wrestling is not your brand of wrestling. It's very weird. It's very odd. It's sometimes overly sexual. It's very built on less moveset and more character stuff, but I still am a wrestler. And if I can get people into the building with something silly and they paid the ticket, there's 8 matches on the card. So they may have come in here to see something silly Effy said he was going to do, or something silly Effy said was going to happen, but they're also in here for a technical grappling match. They're also in here for the high flyers. They're in here for the scramble. They're in here for the main event. Now that I've gotten them in, they get to see the whole world, and they will probably come back. But if I can get you in on something that doesn't seem like serious wrestling, or doesn't seem like we're taking wrestling as seriously as the past, and I can kind of trick you in the building, I can get you with the rest of the wrestling. I need the rest of the wrestling team, and they're starting to see that because they need me as well, because we both need to bring people in. It's not just about like, oh, I got the semi-main event. Think bigger, guys. It's about how many people did we get in for the whole show, and how did that whole show flow to make sure people weren't bored or over it, or felt like they weren't getting their money's worth.
I mean, I can attest to that. Like, I remember, I think it was the first show I ever saw you at. It was Fest either Love is a Battlefield 2 or it was the tag team tournament. But it was you. Actually, it's funny because it was you and Kate, I think KTV or Beastly
Maybe.
against. You were facing Danhausen was one of the guys on the other team, but it
Yes.
was like, like I had no knowledge of anything besides, hey, I was talking to like the Fest promoter and they're like, hey, come check out a show. And then, there was all these different things and it was like you guys up first and then like Beta Scott, I knew, and Caleb Conley, but then there was all of these different things. And I was just like, holy shit, like there's all of these different things that I'm not used to. And that kind of like started me branching out to like more variety as far as like indie shows go.
And it's out there. I mean, there's definitely variety. And I found myself in a very strange position, kind of at the ground floor of everything in this business, because I'm looking around me and I started getting flyouts before I like even should have. I'm in Florida, I'm driving 3 hours to the airport, and I'm getting here and I'm starting to notice like, okay, the guys getting flown out are either former from a company or currently signed to a company, have done something with a company, and I'm getting flown out completely independent just because I'm doing weird stuff and talking shit. And so when you kind of look at the economic situation from that perspective, who's worthy to bring out, who's getting paid what, who's getting money from this promotion, where are these monies coming from in the promotions, whether it's the promoter fronting it, whether it's sponsors fronting it, when I kind of got to see everything and sort of see the economy of all these different weird promotions and all these different weird places, it makes it easier for me to go into a promotion and say, here's some things you can do better, or here's some things you can do worse. I'm not disappearing back into my TV role. I'm still indie all the time. So I'm coming from an indie over here to go to an indie over here. And I'm saying, hey, what they did here was really good and it really worked. And hey, what they did here really worked. And I'm now getting to combine all these relationships. And I mean, like even looking at my show, like I had Hood Slam represented there. I had Party Hard represented. I had all these promotions represented there. And it's like, when we can see that we can all work together and when we can figure out better ways to work together, it's better for everyone. And sometimes you need somebody who's been everywhere to sort of bring everybody together. And I'm trying to do that now. I'm trying to keep as much like independent conversation as we can, because I found myself in a hard position at the beginning of this year. Not a harder position than most people, but a lot of my coworkers were abusers. A lot of my coworkers were being abused. A lot of fans were being abused by people I had as friends or people I trusted. And so now when we're looking at the business and we're looking at what's growing and what's changing, we're not only doing it from a perspective of what's going to bring people in, but also like what's going to keep people safe while they're here. I mean, walking around and checking on fans is not something we typically do, and we have to do it now. We have to check in with our locker room. We have to check in with our fans, and we have to stop thinking about, hey, wrestling is supposed to be this certain thing. Clearly, these certain things didn't always work, and they put us in a bad position. So now I get to kind of come in and go, let's see what's good and bad. I don't know if I have all the answers, but maybe we can make this better than it is. And I hope people will come along with me on it.
Obviously, missing out on WrestleMania weekend is unfortunate. A lot of people financially were affected, but I'd argue the collective really had more of a chance to shine. Individual talent, having it be this past weekend. But on a lesser note, more to your point about what you were just speaking of, you also avoid having names like Joey, David on the card. You don't have to worry about the streaming issue where you're still profiting off of somebody's image with that. So do you feel like it almost should have happened the way that it did, where now you can take these measures and not have to worry about the financial repercussions of like streaming and the archive aspect of it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think about the replay too, like all these kids who would have gotten their first big shine moment, who have worked so hard, really their replay would have been sort of, spoiled.
Like overshadowed, yeah.
Right. And I look at now in my head at the end of my show, I was going to main event the first show, and I changed that whole plan because it was stupid. And I was going to ask a question of my audience there, which was, how many of you are actually going to WrestleMania? And I think a few people would have said it. And then I would have said, how many people are not going to WrestleMania? And it's much easier to message I can't speak today because my tongue is bit, my face is fucked up, my nose is broken. It's much easier to measure our level of success when we are not around another big event, and people can go, oh, well, you only had success because it was around this big event. Now I can look at, okay, we had ticket sales during COVID. We had brave fans coming out, taking the risk, being as safe as possible. But we also trended #4 on Twitter at the peak of our show. We also had so many people using the hashtag. We were also blowing up on Twitter without the need of these bigger companies' events, without the need of these extra straight people who we found out were not trustworthy. It's just about us now. And it's like, it's so much more important for independent wrestling to get to have our own sort of come up without that shadow, without that big WWE shadow, versus just look at us. We're here. It's just us. They came for independent wrestling. They didn't come for anything else. They got a few fun surprises from some TV people, but nobody was really coming just for the TV people. They were coming to see wrestling, and it worked out better having it not around something else.
So you obviously have the support of GCW and your fans. So I guess like what the next question is, what do you need to make the next step for your Effy brand, or what's the future of the Big Gay Brunch?
You know, I don't see myself slowing down anytime soon. And I had a really good conversation with Joey and Brett, who are basically GCW management, saying, hey, this is going to be back. This went extremely well. And building up to it, you know, Brett was so understanding the whole time, but Brett is also a promoter. And so I'm selling these names to Brett that people may not know as well. And I'm saying we have to have these matches. People will love it. And sort of getting that thank you and you're right at the end of everything. And hey, we have more trust in you now. Brett's not someone you get trust with immediately. Joey's not someone you get trust with immediately. But if I can work really hard and say, hey, here's my version of wrestling, I think it can be successful for you. And to have that be successful, not only from a viewership, not only from a safety, not only from a no injury stance, to have it successful from a, hey, that was a really good wrestling show stance, it means a lot to me. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. But I also look really to the future. And I look at kind of the conversations I had this weekend, the conversations I've had with people. I hope in the future, after I can't bump anymore, which hopefully is not anytime soon, that I can still kind of help these younger kids and these younger people that are getting into wrestling kind of at least have a game plan and at least start making preparations. I'm not going to say any names, but I've started like sponsoring merch for newer wrestlers. I've started, trying to give them bigger spots. I have a Twitch show now, which this is a big deal. Like last week, we had over 100,000 people get on Twitch and watch IWTV with me. Unique viewers, 100,000. So we have this opportunity to show wrestling to a new audience that isn't familiar with wrestling at all. I mean, I had people, they were yelling in the chat because Kylie Ray was getting beat up and then she made her comeback and they went wild. And so it's like, yeah, we're a little desensitized to wrestling. I've probably watched 100 wrestling matches this weekend. When I get to see people enjoy wrestling for the first time, or when I get to see wrestlers get that chance to shine on a bigger stage, it makes me feel so good. So I hope once I'm not bumping anymore, I can still be there to kind of help and give back, not even necessarily as like a coach, but just more as someone to say, look, I want you to make the right business decisions. I don't want you to get screwed the same way I did starting out. Let's get you right, and let's cut out some of this bullshit to make sure wrestlers can just be wrestlers and don't have to be 3,000 different things before they get to the ring.
If you're trying to, I guess, introduce Effy to a new wrestling fan, maybe they saw you for the first time this weekend, is there a match that you would point to, and just if I'm putting you on the spot and you have to pick like one or maybe a handful of matches that really highlight who you are as a wrestler or who you want people to see you as?
This weekend especially, I got a little flack for the match I had with Marco Stunt, and I did it on purpose. And I'll get to the matches you should watch, but I just want to say before this, sometimes in wrestling, the sheer ridiculousness of wrestling pulls me in. And for me to have a show with my name on it, to book myself, not in the main event, but the semi-main event, in a match that was 6 minutes long, where I went under and lost to everything, was the perfect thing for me. I wanted gaga ridiculousness, but to also be able to have a match that was very sexually centered was on purpose. Because I think when people think of the abuses, they think of speaking out, they think of what's happened sexually to people, they go, well, that's in bad taste. And I'm going, it's not in bad taste. Because consensual sexual information and activities between two adults is fine and legal. We can't say just because something's sexual that it's offensive, or just because something's sexual that it's abusive. That's not the case anymore. I have always been a consensual pervert. You can come ask my boyfriend. You can come see when I come home. I always check with my people in the matches to make sure they're safe with what I'm doing. Marco is coming back from an ankle injury and was very happy that I had no real spots to call because he doesn't want to hurt himself before TV. The Young Bucks, who shouldn't be friends with me and shouldn't do nice things for me because I've said things about the Young Bucks, they took the chance and said, you know what, that's okay. If it's going to be Gaga, it's going to be this. We will give you our TV star back before he's even on TV once he's healed from his injury. So I wanted to give that moment. But when I think about the matches that you should watch, the first one everyone always says is me versus Nick Gage from last year's 2-Cup Stuffed, which was the StarCast Black Label Pro GCW double show. We were the main event, and I got very bloody and did not wear knee pads. Second to that, though, there's another GCW match with me and Chris Dickinson that I think is fantastic from GCW No Sleep. And the third one I would say, just because I'm very proud of this, is from GCW in LA when I tapped out Eddie Kingston. God bless Eddie Kingston. But I think when people say, oh, well, Effy's not a real wrestler, Effy's just a joke, it's like, yeah, but I've also tapped out Eddie Kingston. And I also had a lot of real matches with people. And if you go look at some of those, you'll see some real wrestling of very different styles where I can hold my own. I want to be a utility player. I want you to say, hey, you got a 6-minute comedy match tonight. And I go, perfect. Hey, you got a 20-minute main event tonight. Perfect. 15-minute death match. Perfect. I want to fill in everywhere, and I want to have the skills to where it's still Effy no matter what the wrestling style you see is.
All right. You guys can check out the replay of Effy's Big Gay Brunch and the Collective on Fight TV, and we'll wait to see what the future of those respective events are. But you're also taking the White Boy Challenge soon.
Oh no! I really fucked up.
I saw that, and I. Do you have any final thoughts on that?
Well, I cut the promo before I knew he was going to announce it as the White Boy Challenge, so I talked a little too much shit. I'm definitely going to get my ass kicked tomorrow by Rodney Mack. In the promo, though, I referenced a previous story where a few years back I was working on an indie show with Teddy Long. And Teddy Long was smoking weed in a middle school from a blunt, smoking it. And he looks at me and he's real high and he goes, was that you out there? And I go, yeah. And I'm standing with my opponent. And he goes, it was terrible. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. Both of y'all got to quit wrestling. Get out of here. This was so bad. And he may have been right. But I found this picture of Rodney Mack and Teddy Long together because Teddy Long used to manage him. And I said, look, Teddy Long gave me some advice too. He said I was terrible. He said I should quit. But I didn't listen to him. I didn't quit. And now you're going to fight me in a shopping mall in Texas, and I'm the fly-in guy. So maybe listening to Teddy Long isn't the best thing to do for your career. So I think I'm going to have to eat that punch tomorrow.
Oh, boy. All right. You can check that out tomorrow. It's Heavy Metal Pro. And again, check out the Fight TV archives. You can stream the Collective. Effy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking time with me.